Yeah, g'day. My name's Brad from Melbourne, Australia. Just thought I'd talk about a couple of things that have really annoyed me, disappointed me. I don't feel proud to be an Australian. I'm not vaccinated. I'm not against anyone getting vaccinated. I'm all for that. Fantastic. I'm a pro-choice person. I've never had a flu. I've never had a runny nose. Never been sick. Touch wood. Um, and for me personally, the last thing I want to do is stick something in my body that really I haven't done much research on. So I was going to touch on some human rights things during COVID and what's sort of happened. And for me personally, over the last 2 years, I've only worked, 5, 6 weeks. And I was about to start working again a few months ago, broke my arm, haven't been able to work. It's been really tough. I've just got myself right and landed a really cool job, which I'm not going to talk about who it was, is, and who for, but it is a big organisation, and the company I got the job with don't discriminate against people not having the jab, but unfortunately, the places that I was going to work at, you must be double vaxxed, and so I can't work. So I was booked in to get a vaccination on Friday. I just couldn't bring myself to do it, and I'm talking, I got no money. I'm on the dole. My payment doesn't even cover my expenses. I've got to find extra money, which I can't. That's just tough. But just want to talk about what's the Commission, doing in response to COVID. Since the start of COVID pandemic, the Commission has provided, advice directly to the federal government, various committees and key organisations to ensure measures to combat COVID-19 protected people's human rights now and advance them in the recovery phase. Now, I know this for a fact, but this is something to do with the Indigenous community. How's the pandemic affecting Indigenous peoples and communities? Well, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island people have higher levels of pre-existing illnesses than other populated groups due to relative social and economic disadvantages. This means that they are susceptible to severe impacts of COVID-19 in their communities. And I know this for a fact that Aboriginals, Indigenous people were held down against their will and were given the jab by Australian military people. That's disgraceful. I just can't believe that they would do that. They've covered that up, kept that all real quiet, But I know that that's happened, Now, because I haven't had the jab and equal opportunity and human rights and protection in Australia and the laws, it's all just a load of shit. No matter what you do, you can't win, right? So I'm just going to point out a couple of things that I did a little bit of research on. So what rights do I have to safe work environments during the pandemic, right? So during the COVID-19 pandemic, and always, employers have the right to be free from discrimination. These rights are protected under Australians' anti-discrimination laws. Understandably, there are concerns about potential risks to the safety and well-being of frontline workers, including those working in health, education, transport, food and retail. All employers, regardless of their occupation, right, have the right in health and safety work environments. There must be accessible avenues for employers to raise concerns about unsafe practices, blah, 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 and that kind of shit. So it really doesn't mean shit to me. But how are our human rights protected in law, right, in Australia during COVID? How are we protected? You know, everyone's, oh, just go get the jab, you'll be fine, you know, no, this and that. It's not about that, mate. It's not about that. You can be jabbed, double jabbed, whatever. You can still get infected. Oh, but you won't die. And like, mate, I'll walk everywhere and have no mask on, anything everywhere, and nothing. So, how are the human rights protected in law in Australia during COVID? Existing laws continue to apply in Australia during COVID-19 pandemic to protect people's human rights, right? For example, people can bring complaints or discrimination of breaches of human rights to the Commission or state and territory human rights and equal opportunity commissions if they are treated unlawful. Well, I know the fact when everyone was at protesting and the cops were firing rubber bullets, people were doing nothing wrong, and cops were there with plain clothes on, in the crowd, mingling, and the cops started everything. And no disrespect to the police force, they've done a great job or whatever. They're only doing their jobs, but very handled disgracefully, right? Now, what's the legal protections of human rights in Australia? Most Australians would be surprised to learn that there are very few legal protections of human rights in Australia. You know, how's that? There's no rights, no protection. Australia has laws to protect people against discrimination, but we don't have laws throughout Australia that set down positive and rights to freedoms we should enjoy in Australia and what that should look like. Victoria, Queensland and ACT have human rights acts that require the government in those places to act consistently with human rights and to fully consider human rights in law, policy and practice. No such laws exist at the federal level or in other states and territories. Australia is one of the only liberal democrats in the world that does not have its own Human Rights Act at the national level. The Australian Human Rights Commission supports the introduction of the Human Rights Act in Australia to better protect the fundamental human rights of all people in Australia. Well, I don't know how that works, but so what human rights are at particular risk of being restricted during a pandemic? So a number of rights have been restricted during the COVID-19 pandemic, right? And the rights of freedom of association, with the virus being airborne and aggressively transmitted in groups, social distancing is key to limiting the spread. Okay, restrictions of association with other people have been introduced worldwide during the pandemic. Restrictions have ranged from total bans in associating with anyone outside your household to only being allowed to gather in groups of limited size for purposes like weddings, funerals and work. The right to peaceful assemblies. Protests involve large groups of people meeting together, and so they have restricted this during the pandemic for similar reasons. Rights to protest and freedom of expression can be exercised in other ways. This is what the government reckon. Everyone get online and protest that way. Well, that's going to fucking do heaps, isn't it? And it's just a load of shit. So the right to liberty of movement, this applies to moving between states in Australia, as well as the freedom to leave the country, including Australia. Border restrictions, are explicitly recognised in international law as a right that may be lawful, restricted during a public emergency. The right to family unification. This includes a right to unification across borders, but is similarly recognised in international law as a right that may be lawful restricted in a time of public emergency. So this is all shit. This is, they write it as they go. The right to enter your own country, international laws provide the people should not be deprived of this right. Again, it is the right that may be lawful restricted in a time of public emergency. So, dozens of human rights breaches have been detailed into the Victorian Ombudsman's report. So the Victorian Ombudsman has detailed human rights breaches linked to enforcement of COVID-19 public health directions, including, this is absolute disgrace, right? Including a woman that was forced to urinate in a bottle, right, while being transported to a hotel quarantine. Another case, like a woman in a wheelchair waited 4 hours at a COVID-19 testing fucking site where there were no wheelchair accessible toilets. She was told, right, she'd have to rejoin at the back of the queue if she'd left to find a wheelchair access bathroom. Who does that? Australia's gone mad. People have got no idea. No one's solid anymore. No one's, whole, everyone together. Look what happened with all the toilet rolls, mate. Everyone went crazy, and isn't it amazing? You really find out the truth of how people are. Everyone, Aussies stick together and all that kind of stuff, mate. Some bloke, 4 trolleys worth of shit paper with some other poor bastard in a wheelchair or disabled don't get 2 rolls. Then that normally we give, mate. These people just took everything and just, mate, Australia's not unified anymore, mate. It's just true colours shined very, very quickly. And I'm disgraced to be an Australian with all that shit, Absolute joke. Like Dandrews is he's a muppet, mate. And he lied about the curfew. He lied about it, mate. He got caught out big time. Like both the Victorian Police Commissioner and the Police Chief Health Officer have embarrassed Dandrews by admitting on separate occasions to national media that the nightly curfews, which had Melburnians locked in their homes between the hours of 8 and 5, whatever it was, were not instigated by either of them. Yeah. Now, many people apparently asking the question, whose idea was it to have the nightly lockdowns and why? Originally, Dandrews told state parliament that the police commissioner had told him that a nightly curfew would make it easier to police stage 4 restrictions. But this appears to me to be incorrect, with the police commissioner saying he was never consulted on the issue and was only alerted to the curfew hours before it was put into place on 2nd of August 2020. Melburnians continue to face another several weeks of night curfews, although from this weekend the night curfews will be changed, blah, blah, blah. It's all just shit. And how's this? Any chance to make money, the government fucking all over it, right? COVID-19 fines have exceeded over $1 million, right? According to data, right, released, the curfew has been a steady revenue earner for the state, with dozens of people fined for being out of their homes after 8, including a man who was involved in a serious accident, right? With police who shot through his car window in one night alone, shortly after the curfew was introduced. Police had issued 43 fines. So Victoria has collected over $1 million in fines for COVID-19 breaches. I hope no one pays those fines, because what a fucking joke. Now, let's talk about a little bit of discrimination. And this is more for me because of my employer and my rights and that. And basically, you got no rights, right? Is it discriminatory that my employer or my service provider require me to get vaccinated, right? It's all to do with the Equal Opportunity Board and all these crap, right? The Equal Opportunity Board prohibits discriminations in certain areas of life, including employment, and the provisions of goods and services based to protect attributes such as disabilities or religious beliefs or activity. Vaccination status is not a protected attribute under the Equal Opportunity Board. This means that discrimination laws don't offer protection for anyone who chooses not to get vaccinated only for people who have one of the other protected attributes in the Equal Opportunity Act. If an employer makes the vaccinations a mandatory condition of employment, or a service provider requires a proof of vaccination to access a service, this could be discrimination if you can't be vaccinated due to a disability or other attribute protected under the Equal Opportunity Act, and they do not make an exception for you at all. The circumstances in which you may or may not have grounds for the discrimination claim are outlined. Yeah, outlined where, mate? You can't find nothing. It's all bullshit. So, you know, for me, you know, what's the reasons for not getting vaccinated? And, you know, like, what if my reasons for not getting vaccinated are connected with a protected attribute under the Act? All right. So, you know, I've looked into maybe I can't get to my doctor, can't get vaccinated because I don't want to get that shit. I don't, mate. Everyone got vaccinated. I reckon they'll just next year, mate. They're just going to turn into zombies and die, mate. It won't be a little small amount of us left, right? So if your reasons for not getting, like, say, vaccinated are connected to a protected attribute under Equal Opportunity Act, then an employer or service provider requiring you, right, to get vaccinated could be discrimination. It could be discrimination. So, for example, people with certain disabilities or medical conditions may not be able to get the vaccination for medical reasons, right? The vaccine may not have been tested on people with their medical conditions, or the vaccination could be dangerous for people with their medical conditions. So I've got a medical condition. It's called I don't want to get the jab because there's not enough research on this shit. Now, I know that in America, mate, in the 60s, they lied about something that happened with some testing, and 40 million Americans all got the jab, similar thing, right? And there's this lawsuit for like trillions of dollars that's still going that they've tried to just cover up because people started having side effects and shit started happening to them, mate. Like bad shit. It's going to happen to everyone. Everyone's going to start growing fucking an extra ear, and you know, someone will have a baby and the baby will be fucking just watch in the next couple of years. It'll take a little bit of time, but we'll start realising things after the fact, and it's like, oh well, bad luck, you know, shit happens, kind of thing. So, requiring people to be vaccinated is their circumstances could amount to indirect discrimination or a failure to make reasonable adjustments. That's pretty shit. If this is the case, the employer or service provider may seek to rely on health and safety grounds to impose the vaccine. Now, if a person's reason for not wanting a vaccine is not linked to a protection attribute under the Equal Opportunities Act, then this could not be discrimination. For example, if you don't want to be vaccinated due to a personal preference or concerns about side effects, you may nevertheless have options under employment law. Well, like me, my job, I've been employed, they don't discriminate, but I can't work anywhere. And you feel inferior. It's like those people who got the jab, you know, get on Facebook and they've got their Band-Aid, like, oh, yeah, you know, like, but fuck off. Seriously, you don't, who cares? Seriously, you know, the people who've been vaccinated and they, it's like us against them. Like, I feel like, and I've got friends and I've got family, like, I couldn't see my brother the other day. He had the kids come over to my sister, and he said that he didn't want me to be there because I wasn't vaccinated. And I'm like, mate, you can still give COVID to your kids, mate. I'm, you know, like, if I've got it or you got it, you still got it. No, it's, you know. And I've had people say to me, oh yeah, but you know, because I've had the jabs, you know, I just won't get sick in that. Bullshit. You won't get sick. All right, so am I protected under the Equal Opportunity Act, right, if I can't be vaccinated due, say, you're religious, right? Now, I might as well just say that I'm a priest or I'm going to start my own church. I want to get around this because religious belief or activity is a protected attribute under the Equal Opportunity Act, which makes it unlawful to discriminate against someone because of their religious beliefs or activity. All right? So that's fine. Religious beliefs or activities defined is holding or not holding a lawful religious belief or view, or engaging in, not engaging in, or refusing to engage in a lawful religious activity. It has been interpreted broadly and like, for example, in a case where religious beliefs or activity discrimination has been proven, is where fresh halal meat was not provided to a Muslim prisoner who requested it. I've got nothing against Muslims or whatever, wherever you're at, whoever, why, where, what, like, churches don't pay taxes, mate. They get away with everything. So, is requiring employers to be vaccinated a lawful and reasonable direction under employment law? Under employment law, employers can direct their employees to be vaccinated if the direction is lawful and reasonable. Whether a direction is lawful and reasonable depends on the circumstances. So they word things very well. So you can't win, mate. The Fair Work Ombudsman has published information on the factors that may be relevant when determining whether requiring employers to be vaccinated is likely to be reasonable. So if your employer directs you to get vaccinated and your reasons for not getting vaccinated are connected to a protected attribute under the Equal Opportunity Board, then an employer requiring you to get vaccinated could be discriminating and therefore be unlawful. So basically, if you don't get vaccinated, you can't get a job, doing anything, like nothing, mate. And just to finish, is it a breach under the human rights of employers or service providers to require staff or customers to be vaccinated? So in Victoria, the Charter of Human Rights and Responsibilities set out the human rights that people enjoy, as well as the responsibilities on public authorities to protect and promote those rights. The Charter has continued to apply during the state of emergency in Victoria, imposed by the government to manage the COVID-19 pandemic. And what that means is that public authorities must consider and act compatibly with human rights when making decisions, and that if they fail to do so, they could be taken to court. So if a public authority requires employers to be vaccinated for COVID-19, this may engage certain charter rights, including the right to life, the right to freedom of thought, the right not to be subjected to medical or scientific treatment without full, free and informed consent, the right not to have privacy unlawfully, it interferes with the rights of equal, interferes with the rights to be equal and to be protected from discrimination. So I don't know what to do, because basically I can't work if I'm not vaccinated anywhere. And all these breaches and discrimination acts and rights and all that kind of stuff, you got no right. They're saying you're protected, but we've got nothing. We don't even have, our constitution is just a load of shit. And it's only going to get worse. Everyone's weird. People are not the same. People don't want to be locked down. They're scared. You don't come near me like I've got a disease, like I've got friggin' AIDS or something. AIDS, nothing against AIDS or whatever, but what's the world come to? What's Australia come to? It's just divided. I don't watch much news because it's all fake and bullshit. Everyone, did you see what happened on Channel 7 the other night? So-and-so said this. Oh, yeah, what? Because they told you that's the truth, is it? Just all bullshit and propaganda. But anyway, thanks for listening. Hope that sort of made a little bit of sense to anyone out there. It's not fair. I'm looking at ways of getting around it by, like, I don't know what to do, but I'm in a shit position because I don't want to get the jab. It's not for me, and I'm a hard worker and I've always paid my taxes, and the fact that I can't go to my job and put food on the table is an absolute disgrace in this country. And at the moment, I'm not proud to be an Australian and to be living in Victoria. All right, cheers guys, thank you.